Hello, everyone. My name is Sharzad Kiade. Welcome back to Not My Circle. Today, I am talking to a beautiful young woman named Monica, who also happens to be in a wheelchair. Enjoy. Hi, Monica.
Hi.
You look gorgeous. Your makeup
Thank you so much.
Beautiful, and your hair, you look fabulous.
Thank you so much.
You're into makeup, right?
Yes, very.
Cool. I once upon a time worked as a makeup artist many moons ago.
That's cool.
It was fun. It was really fun. I met my through a makeup job, so it worked out.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. So what'd you have for breakfast today?
I made a smoothie today, which I pretty much do every single day. So nothing too exciting.
What kind of smoothie girl are you? I'm a smoothie girl. What do you put in yours?
I do frozen banana, frozen blueberries, and then spinach, almond milk, peanut butter protein powder, and a little cinnamon.
It's basically my favorite blend.
Yeah.
So
it's so easy.
All right. You are in a wheelchair. Let's talk about that. Let's take me back to the beginning.
Okay.
Tell me about you, girlfriend.
Okay. So I have a hereditary peripheral neuropathy called Charcot-Marie-Tooth syndrome. And it's actually the most common inherited peripheral neuropathy in the world, but nobody has heard of it because it has a terrible name. It was named after the 3 doctors who discovered it. So you'll tell people I have Charcot-Marie-Tooth and they're like, wait, what's wrong with your teeth? And so it's about as common as MS, but again, has a terrible name. So people don't know what it is. So essentially my brain doesn't send the right signals to the nerves and the muscles of my lower extremities. So it doesn't affect the central nervous system. It affects the peripheral nervous system. So it is a progressive disorder. They knew I had it when I was just 2 years old because I inherited it from my dad. My dad passed it to my sister. So they really knew what they were looking for. And so they knew when I was just a toddler that I had it. By the time I was 5, I was in my first pair of leg braces, was able to walk with leg braces for the majority of my childhood and adolescence. And then I started using a wheelchair in high school as the disease progressed further and I was unable to walk. In college, I lost the ability to stand. And so I have been in the wheelchair for probably like full time a decade at this point.
When you were growing up, did you feel like something was different about you? Did you, were you aware?
Well, I really always knew about CMT just because so many members of my family have it. So I grew up in that environment. It started with my grandfather, and then I have a couple of aunts and uncles with it, and then my dad and my sister, a few cousins as well. So I grew up always knowing about CMT, and because I was diagnosed so young, I always knew about it. It wasn't like a surprise or anything. And in my case, I went to this school called Morse and Mock, and Morse and Mock was like half school for really severe physical disabilities. And then the other half was just like an able-bodied school. And I went to the able-bodied half, but we always were around people with mobility aids and, wheelchairs, walkers, the whole deal. So when I started wearing my first pair of leg braces in kindergarten, it wasn't like people thought I was really different or anything because they were so used to seeing things like that. And then I switched schools in 3rd grade, and that's when I stuck out like a sore thumb. And it was like, that's when I really felt very different.
How did kids treat you?
With a lot of curiosity, but when you're a kid yourself, you just don't want to stick out in that way, or at least I didn't. Yeah. Like I would be followed on the playground constantly, like, what's wrong with you? Why are you wearing casts on your legs? And what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Constantly. And so I just sort of retreated into myself and I just would ignore everybody. But I felt very isolated for a very long time. And, even the teachers, like, because I was really the first really disabled student that they had, at least, to my knowledge. And so teachers didn't really know what to do with me either. There was a camping trip that everybody goes on in 5th grade, and everyone was so excited to go. And the teacher called my mom and was basically like, Monica shouldn't go because there will be nothing for her to do. And so I was always very much pushed to the sidelines all the time. Being disabled isn't this is going to sound weird. Being disabled isn't the hardest part about being disabled. It's the inaccessibility of the world around us. If the world were more accessible, being disabled wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the world's not just going to be accessible. People have to work to make it that way. And so when the teacher, told my mom, oh, Monica shouldn't go, there was no talk of, okay, what can we do to make this inclusive and accessible? Now, this was a different time, this was the 90s. Like, I'm sure it's a little better now. But, as far as being a kid goes, you just have to include kids and everything. Like, our brains aren't formed enough to understand that, we're a little different. We have to do things a little differently. You just feel left out. As an adult, I don't mind like the curiosity of kids anymore because I have enough, space and distance to understand. But it's the rude things from adults now that really set me on fire a little bit. Like when an adult asks me, what's wrong with you? That's a little hard to take. Or what happened is another one that I get a lot. And that's one that really, I don't understand why you would ever ask someone that, because say like I wasn't just born with this disability, say, I had some traumatic accident that had happened to me. You're basically asking someone to relive their worst trauma to satisfy your own curiosity. And what does that knowledge give you? Nothing.
Right. That brings up a really good question of just how people should respond. I feel like the natural reaction from adults is when somebody is different from them, they almost ignore, right? They look away because they either don't want to offend by saying something wrong or they don't want to come off as staring. And so they just ignore. I've seen it happen. I've just observed people. But that's not the right thing to do. I mean, what is the right thing to do? Just a normal smile and just be normal?
Just like a person?
Yeah, you're like, yeah, bitch. Like treat me like and that'd be nice.
I know, like, that's the thing people get. And I think a lot of it is projection. I think that, there's just this sort of human instinct of not wanting to be hurt or it's almost like an animalistic instinct, for survival is how I look at it. And so when someone sees somebody like me who is, in their mind broken or however you want to put it, they are a little put off by that. And some people, ignore. Some people say what happened. And then just as worse as saying what happened, some people will try to make a joke about it. Every wheelchair user has heard the same speed limit joke when they're going in the grocery store, like, oh, watch how fast you're going. Do you have a speed limit on that thing? I mean, it's not your situation to make light of. I can make jokes about it, but it's not your situation. So,
right. Yeah. How important is it for you to see somebody in a wheelchair represented, in movies, in media, in pop culture? Does that mean something to you? I feel like there's so much talk about inclusivity, and a lot of times those conversations have to do with, different gender inclusivities and race inclusivities. There's not a ton of talk in my experience about able-bodied and is disabled.
Disabled, yeah.
Okay. Disabled-bodied inclusivity in mainstream media. So is that something that's really important to you?
Yeah, I would say that's something that's at the very top of my list of things that are important to me, because the representation that disabled people are given in mainstream media is of one of two things. We're either inspirational or we're tragic. And if you look at every movie, really, that stars someone in a wheelchair, there it's an able-bodied actor, it's able-bodied writers trying to tell a story that they don't understand. Right. And so then in turn, people out in the real world look at me as if I am inspirational for doing something as simple as going to the grocery store, or I am tragic. I must hate my life and be sad about it. And so that's really something that I have tried to work on so much. My tagline on my website, on my Instagram, is reclaiming the disabled narrative, because it's just such a harmful narrative that's out there right now.
So what do you do for work? Is this part of your brand and your message? Like, what do you do?
Well, for my day job, I work at a library. I've worked there for 14 years. Started off as a page, which is the people who shelve books and do all the grunt work. And now I'm the social media manager for that library. But as far as my reclaiming the disabled narrative thing, I write as much as I can on my website. I post on Instagram. I'm just always trying to get our real narrative out there. I do interviews on my website with other disabled women as well.
You said disabled is is a perfectly fine word to use. What are words that are maybe not okay to say?
Yes. So disabled is great. If you ever are on the disability community on Instagram, you'll see the hashtag disabled is not a dirty word. Okay. It's the word that most of us prefer. Okay. Words that are not great are differently abled, handy capable. These are phrases and words that were created by able-bodied people to make themselves more comfortable. Okay. There's nothing wrong with being disabled. And when you say things like differently abled, it's like, oh, you're not disabled. It's like, no, I am. And I need you to see that. It's the same thing as saying, I don't see color. Well, if you don't, then we're not going to be able to fix these systemic problems in our society. Right.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. What is life like for you? What's a day in the life like for you?
It's pretty normal because it's my normal. I'm so used to being in a wheelchair that it's just how I go through the world. I always say that I'm so much happier being in the chair than I was before I was in it because it was such a struggle to get around. I was constantly worried about falling or not, like my legs giving out, not being able to walk from point A to point B. And then once I sort of accepted, like, okay, my disease has progressed to the point where I need to be in a wheelchair. Because I fought against that for so long because of my own internalized ableism of thinking that would be, the worst thing in the world. And then once I accepted it and, accepted my life on wheels, things just got so much better. I'm able to go on a quote unquote walk with my husband in the park. That's something I was never able to do before. The world has opened up to me in a way that my life does feel more normal now in a chair than it did when I was struggling to walk with leg braces or struggling to make my body more able-bodied than it is. So a day in my life is, getting up and going to work and just living.
What do you feel like some common misconceptions are about you?
I would say the inspiration and tragedy thing is like the most common misconception about me. Also, like anytime I try to, this is a perfect example. Yesterday, I made a post on Instagram where I was wearing camo print pants. And I thought of a joke that was funny to me, like, got tired of people staring at my legs. Now you can't even see them. And I thought it was hilarious. But then I got all of these comments from people who thought I needed some kind of pep talk. It's like, I'm just making a joke. Like all these comments, like, you're beautiful on the inside and all this stuff, as if like, you know what? I'm beautiful on the outside too. Just because I'm disabled, I don't need this. It's just like that kind of stuff constantly. Like, you're infantilized and people think that you need help with everything. And people think that like they're the first ones to ever say certain things to you, like the jokes that we hear over and over and over again. And so that's another reason why we just need more representation, because if people saw the way that disabled people really are, I think they would like cool it a little bit around actual disabled people and not feel so uncomfortable.
What are some more of the common jokes you hear?
Okay, there's the speed limit one. There's the "can I ride on your lap" one.
Ew.
Oh yeah.
Is that to you?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, there's some other ones. I should have these like ready to go. Not a joke, but some people come up and ask to pray over you or ask if they can heal you, that kind of thing.
Serious?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one makes me so mad.
What part of the country are you in?
I'm in the Midwest in Indiana, so there's a large religious contingent here.
Okay. You said religion, and I just thought, I don't know, it made me think that, you're in the Bible Belt or somewhere in Indiana.
No, just Indiana. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I mean, you have such a positive spirit and energy. I mean, how do you maintain that with all this weird shit coming your way all the time?
I think a lot of it comes from my family, because, like I said, surrounded by people with my same disorder my entire life. And so I've always had those people to lean on, and I feel understood by them. My sister has it. So, we have that really strong connection. And also our mom is possibly the strongest woman alive. And she just really instilled in us confidence. And her sisters are such a big part of our life too. So I've had this great community of women my entire life. And I've always felt included and loved and supported by them. And so I think I just have this inherent confidence from that, where these sort of outside factors don't have a chance to get in my psyche too much.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine like going out and somebody just bombarding me with things that I don't want to deal with. And this is just from a daily activity, like going to the grocery store or whatever it is that you're doing. And you're constantly you've got to kind of protect your energy all the time. And I'm sure some days are easier than others, right? Because you said we're humans. I mean, even like me dealing with trolls on the internet, some days I'm like, bring it on, bitch. And other days I'm like, leave me alone. Like, just leave me alone.
Just delete. Yeah.
But you're dealing with real life trolls. Like these I deal with internet. You're dealing with trolls coming up to you and saying shit that's worthy of a punch in the face.
Oh, yeah. And, I was really, really angry about it for a long time, especially like I was bullied pretty relentlessly in middle school. And so I kind of got the worst of it then. And so now it doesn't feel it. Maybe I've just built up a sort of armor to it. It's just my life. I expect it. Face masks help during this, pandemic, wearing a face mask to the store. I'm not like forced, and nobody's really looking at each other. Everybody's just kind of getting their shit and going. True. So that's been kind of helpful.
What do you want people to know about you?
I want people to know about me and about all disabled people that we are just people. Like the disability community is the one marginalized group that anyone can join at any time. And so, you hate to have to appeal to people that way, but sometimes it's the only way to get someone to see your humanity is by pointing out their own humanity to them, that, you could have an accident at any second and be a disabled person. And so I want people to know that we are just people. Like, we're people on wheels. My disability is not the most important thing about me. And even though like it's so visible, there's so much more to me than that.
That's a really interesting thing you said that I've never thought about, is that in your group of disabled people, anybody could join at any time.
Yeah, it does not discriminate.
Yeah, of course. Tell me about what you see for your future. Like, I feel like you're so articulate and passionate, and that you could take this and be the representation for anybody else that's coming up behind you. Do you see that, or is that me projecting that you should be an inspiration, which is what we just fucking talked about? You don't want to have that pressure.
No. So the inspiration thing, like, just to be clear, if somebody does something that's actually inspirational, like a Paralympic athlete, like somebody who's actually, doing the work and putting hard work in, that can be inspirational. It's when somebody comes up to me and tells me they're proud of me for using my debit card, which happened to me at the grocery store.
Okay. Yeah.
That's, it's infantilizing. It's not, it's not great. As far as my future goes, I see myself, continuing to reclaim the disabled narrative. Writing is my number one passion. I'm glad that you think I'm articulate, because in my head, I'm like, it's hard for me to talk. I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker. And so I see myself maybe writing a book somewhere down the line. And that's really what I want to do the most, is just get my story out there.
Okay. Can you have kids?
Yes, I can. Most disabled women can, as far as I know, even people who are paralyzed from the waist down, which is not the case for me. Like I said, I have a peripheral neuropathy, and there is a chance that I would pass on CMT. It's about a 50-50 shot. And it's actually something my husband and I have been talking more about recently, because I am 31. So it's, something we have to think more seriously about now. But it's definitely something that we want. For a long time, I didn't, because I didn't want to relive my childhood. If our kid had CMT, my childhood was just really, really hard. And as I've gotten older and I've, moved past those traumas and accepted those traumas, I feel like I'm in a more healthy place to do that.
How can people be an ally to you?
When just make things accessible when you can, and not just for people in wheelchairs and things. Like, put those captions on your Instagram story, make things accessible for people so they don't feel isolated. When you see very obvious violation of the ADA, and like, you don't have to know the ADA back to front. I don't, even though I'm disabled, but if you see a business that doesn't have a ramp, or, like things that are just not accessible, like, you can use your voice to help amplify our voices.
Okay. So it's really, really your biggest, I would say from talking to you, one of your biggest issues is just accessibility in the everyday world. So basic things, grocery store, gas station.
Yes.
Whatever, right?
Yes. You would not imagine the amount of clothing stores who use the accessible changing rooms for storage. Like, I have gone to, try on clothes in the past, and they have to move all of this shit out of there that they've been storing. I've had to change clothes with broken glass and dust and just things everywhere, because people just don't take us into consideration. And I can understand that to a point, because it's not your life. It's not at the front of your mind. It's not something you're thinking about. You just see a big room and okay, we can shove everything in there, but you're taking away something from somebody. And so again, coming back to representation, if more people understood what it's actually like to live with a disability, it would be more in their minds when they are considering accessibility.
Yeah, I got to be honest. There's so many of these things that you're talking about, I really have never thought about before. And so
Right.
that's so important for me to have these conversations so I can, open my mind up. I always think I'm so open-minded. And then, one of the reasons I wanted to start this series, because I realized I don't talk to a lot of people that are that different from me. I really don't. I'm in my bubble. And
I think all of us are, though. I mean,
right.
I think that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, I don't want to be in my bubble, though. I want to be more open to learning how other people live, so I can be, in general, a better human and not say something offensive. I'm sure I have said many offensive things in my life without even knowing. I swear in my heart,
Sure.
My heart is usually pretty pure, but every now and then I'm like, oh, I don't even know. Like today, I don't really know the lingo. I didn't fully know if the word disabled was a bad word or not.
Right.
I talked to a little person a few weeks ago on this series, and she told me the M word, which I won't say, is a really bad word. And she explained why. And I realized I had said that word before, and I will never say it again, because she, it meant a lot to her. And I want to always be respectful of language, identity. And I think it's just an interesting conversation to talk to people that seem different. But in reality, you and I probably have a ton in common. You say you love makeup and you love to read. You work in a library. I love to read too.
Well, I was actually, before we started recording, I just finished listening to that episode you were talking about. And I knew that the M word was not okay, but I didn't know all the reasons behind it. So I really loved her explanation on that. And it also made me think of another phrase I wanted to throw out there, because it's one that people use a lot, and that's wheelchair bound. And that phrase doesn't make any sense, because it assumes that there's this sort of lack of freedom, when really our wheelchairs give us so much freedom. I'm bound to the couch when I'm sitting there. I'm bound to the bed when I'm there, because I can't move. When I'm in my chair, I'm the freest that I ever am. So wheelchair bound is also a phrase that the disability community is trying to get rid of. Just diving deeper on the inspirational thing, there's this weird thing that able-bodied people, and I'm obviously not talking about every single person, I'm talking about the sort of whole society of able-bodied people, really want disabled people to overcome their disability, because then they are the inspiration that that an able-bodied society craves. And there's also a lot of praise that is put on, there's these articles that you see, right? I saw one recently where it was supposed to be a feel-good article about how insurance wouldn't pay for this little boy's wheelchair. And so the high school robotics team made him a wheelchair. And on the surface, that's great, hooray. But why couldn't this kid get a wheelchair? It shouldn't be that hard to have access to equipment that literally is our entire lives. Like if somebody broke their legs, that you wouldn't wait for insurance to put a cast on them. So it's really frustrating seeing this praise that goes up for things that in my mind are horrible. Like we're focusing on the wrong part of the story.
Right. Was it hard for you to, is it a super expensive machine, your wheelchair? Is that an insurance thing? Is that an out-of-pocket thing? Like what are the costs? You've got to make your whole house accessible. Is that coming out of your pocket?
If I had to do that, then yes, I thankfully I live in an apartment that is accessible enough for my needs. But yeah, if I had to, do any kind of customization, like insurance doesn't pay for that kind of thing. It is very, very expensive to be a disabled person. My wheelchair is just a manual, custom wheelchair, but it was $5,000 and it took so long to get approved, even though the chair I was using at the time before I had this one was so uncomfortable, caused me so much pain. It was falling apart. It was being held together by duct tape in certain areas. And I was supposed to get my chair. It was supposed to be 70 days from the time they, fitted me for it and all that. And it took over half of a year to get the chair. And that is better than most. Like a lot of people are waiting a year or two to get this equipment that they really need because we're not good for the insurance agency's like bottom line. And so it is, it's very, very expensive and very frustrating to be a disabled person when it comes to just trying to get the equipment that you need to live your life.
God, and if you don't have the money, you just don't, you just don't get the luxury of being mobile and living in society. Wow. I never thought about that.
Yeah. If you don't have the money and if you don't have the ability to advocate for yourself, because I was calling constantly trying to get the ball rolling. I was being bounced back and forth between doctors and the insurance agency and the third-party company that facilitates the wheelchairs. It is a mess that a lot of people probably just give up on and then never get the equipment that they need.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. And it's so frustrating too that you said people come up and like pray for you to like change and that they want some story of you like getting out of your wheelchair and running in a prairie or something like that. The only thing that I can relate to is that when my mom had terminal cancer, people would come up to me and say, well, I believe in miracles and I think she's going to get cured. And I'm like, but actually like saying that is taking away from the reality. She's not going to get cured and she did die. And I wish that people recognize that instead of focusing on this fairy tale that wasn't going to happen at all. It really took away when I was like, I just want you to like be here with me now instead of, some fantasy that you've created in your own mind because you can't handle the truth.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it didn't come from a bad place. And I know in my heart it doesn't come from a bad place, but it still was annoying. And
it's so annoying.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think that a lot of people that are have really good intentions say and do dumb shit and they're projecting their own insecurities and fears.
Yeah.
And
and I hope that they are willing to learn, listening to conversations like this and thinking back, but it's also like, I don't have the capacity all the time to do that emotional labor for them. Okay. Like, I don't want to have to explain to someone who comes up to me in the grocery store and says something like, okay, this was wrong. And this is why, like, I'm an introvert too. And so I just don't like that. I don't want to have to explain like why you shouldn't say things like that. The internet is free. There's a wealth of information out there to change your mind if you're willing to change it. But there's so much expected of me sometimes. Like I'll get messages where people are like, so what is CMT and tell me about it? I'm like, well, that's what I've been doing on this page for years. Like go to any of my posts, go read the things that I've taken the time to write about it.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on you as you're just living your life. You're like, I'm trying to buy fucking cereal, bitch.
I know, like leave me alone.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.